at a certain year. And she said her mother just told the story yesterday, so she's freaking out. So I said, you don't have to freak out. You don't have to worry. I could also read tarot cards, and so could you, and they have absolutely no meaning. There's nothing to worry about, right? But sometimes when you learn things, so what's a prophet, right? What's a prophet? So everybody's definition suddenly becomes, the weird of the person. And unfortunately, it's not only by the non-Jews. Today, my husband and I were talking about this, how you have rabbis and they have real rabbis, right? You have mikubalim and they have a bunch of heebie-jeebie junk, which is 99% of it. I told my husband if we would just go into the business of selling plain water bottles with some kind of squiggles on it, we would become millionaires, right? Because somebody once came to Rav Peretz, our Rav, and he said he wants a skula because they needed, I think, kids or some kind of Yeshua. So he said the skula is, you'll learn a little bit more, you'll do more mitzvot. She said, no, but I want like a real skula. He said, no, but that's the best skula. You want a skula? Listen to Hashem, right? He said, no, you're not a real rabbi. So she went to somebody else who they paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to get the red strings and the bottles of wine. It's like, for what? So we said a Navi is somebody who truly connects to God on a plane that not the average human being does. He has deep intellect, he has the ability to absorb, and more than having the ability to absorb, has the ability to give over. Because so many people know how to take in, but not many know how to give. Right? Not many know how to give. And that's the purpose of the Navi. He said most of us are probably not going to become Neviim. That's the truth. Most of us are not going to become Neviim. And if you're going to start hearing voices and hallucinations, find yourself a local psychiatrist. You're not a Navi. Not yet. Right? But the Navi already did the talking. He said, now it's our turn to do the listening. We have to listen. He said, when we listen, we can't have agendas. So the first thing I figured is, let's go back a little bit to basics. Right? Let's look at these charts, which will give us an idea of, Navi is a broad term. What are we talking about? Which svarim, which books, how many are there, and which one specifically we're going to focus in. So these are two different pages. I'll just take one. There you go. You want both of them. And we know that Tanakh, the acronym of Tanakh stands for?
Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim.
Good. The acronym of Tanakh stands for Torah, right? Nevi'im and Ketubim. So let's divide it. Torah is
Bereshit.
good. Chamishei Chumshei Torah, right? Bereshit, Shemot, Vayikra, Bamidbar, Dvarim. Yeah? All told by God to Moshe Rabbeinu, besides for the last 8 psukim. That's
The
last 8 psukim in Vizot HaBracha were written by Yehoshua. Okay? According to some. According to others, Moshe Rabbeinu wrote it. The very simple reason is, if you look into the Dvarim, at the end what it says is, the last 8 sentences you have over here in Vizot HaBracha. This is when the Jews are just about going into Eretz Yisrael, finally. So much politics. Correct. But the last 8 psukim, if you start with here, Pasuk Hey, the 5th. Sorry.
What is 8 psukim?
Oh, very good. 8 verses. A pasuk is a verse. Thank you for asking. So Pasuk Hey, right? The 5th verse starts. Vayamat Sham Moshe, Eved Hashem be'eretz Moav, and Moshe, the servant of Hashem, died over there in Moav, al pi Hashem. So over there, the question is, if he died, how did he write this part? Right? How did he write this part? So Rashi and other commentaries say he wrote it because God told him to write it, and he was crying because here he knew this is the end. It's kind of like somebody's writing an autobiography and he knows he's never going to make it into Israel. Today we are so fortunate. I always tell people, if you would just put away the money that you spend on Starbucks for 1 year, you can get yourself a trip to Israel in a really nice hotel. Right? We're so lucky. When my dad came for the first time from Israel to New York, it took him 2.5 weeks. He stopped in Pompeii and eventually came to New York City, lost about 50 pounds, and was seasick the entire time. Today, it's, okay, from here, granted, it's a hard journey. It's 16 hours. If you have a stopover, it's 18. But we're so lucky. Here Moshe Rabbeinu is standing. He just led the entire nation. Hashem says, Ad Kan. This is where you stop and you're going to give it over. And it says he cried so much, and from those tears the otiot formed, and that he actually wrote this. Others say no, Yehoshua was the one who actually ended it off. Right? So we have Torah is the 5 books of Moshe Rabbeinu, and now we're going to go into Nach. Right? The Nach part is Navi and Ktubim. So if you look at these sheets, we have the Sifrei Navi. And we start off with Yehoshua, right? We have Yehoshua, Shoftim, which are the judges, Shmuel Aleph and Bet, which talks about the kings, starting with Shaul HaMelech and David, and going into Melachim Aleph and Bet, which continue with Shlomo HaMelech, the split of the Malchut Yehuda and Yisrael, right? The Jewish nation splits, unfortunately. Then we have Yirmiyahu, who is right before the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash. We have Yechezkel, who gives a lot of nevuah about what's going to be Bezrat Hashem. Yeshayahu.
Is he the only one who actually prophesies outside the land of Israel?
Who? Yechezkel. So Daniel also did, but he's not considered as one of the Navi. He's not a Navi.
Right.
He's not a Navi. If you look at, okay, so that we have till Yeshayahu, and then we have a set that's called the Trei Asar. Trei meaning 2. Trei is 2, and Asar is 10, meaning there are 12. Right? So then you have a set of 12, which is compiled into one. They're very, very short. They're very short, and you have included in there Hosea, Yoel. Now, if you ever go to Israel, something very interesting. The Talmud Bavli always says, when it wants to describe something, it says Teshma. Right? Come here, I'll describe it to you. Talmud Yerushalmi that was written in Yerushalayim, what does it say? It always says Techazeh, come see. Because when you don't live in the country, you can't really experience it. You could just hear from stories. You're living in Bavel, you can hear stories. But you walk down the streets in Israel today, 2014. My parents live on the corner of Yoel and Avinoam Yeled. They used to live on Svanya. Right? These are all the Neviim. So wherever you go, it's funny, you go to Israel sometimes, I'm not religious, and then they start talking to you, they're more religious than us religious people in the States, because there's something about Israel. Right? So we have over here Hosea, Yoel, Amos, Ovadia. You want to read the rest, Rachel?
Yonah, Micha, Nahum, Havakuk, Tzfanya, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi.
Beautiful. So these are the Trei Asar. Now, often you'll see they divide between the Neviim Rishonim, right, and the Neviim Achronim. It's not a real division. It usually stops by Melachim Aleph and Bet. That's considered the cutoff for the Neviim Rishonim. And then you have Yirmiyahu continuing down to Trei Asar as the Neviim Achronim. I found one answer to it and said it's more contemporary split. But if you look at the language that they're written very differently. Meaning the Neviim Rishonim are all written as a chronological story, which it's not. It's not a story, the Navi. But it's written in a story format with the Musar interlaced with the history. Once you get into the Neviim Achronim, it's really mostly Nivuah. It's mostly Yirmiyahu talking. It's Yechezkel talking, as opposed to giving you the chronological story, which is why the shift between Neviim Rishonim and Achronim is usually split by Melachim Bet. But it's not a real split. That's the truth. It's not a real... Similar to our Parshiot, sometimes where they start, where they end. So that's the Nun part, the Nach. Right? This is the Navi. So then we go on to the next part, which is the second page you have over here. Ktubim. Ktubim literally comes from the root word of Ktav, writings. Right? So you have...
Everybody gets the second page.
I hope so. Did you get one?
Because there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
There's one here and the two over there.
You see, more is never a problem. Too little is.
Pass them out.
You did. Ariel, you want to read the Chamesh Megillot? So these because we usually read them somewhere during the year. Like?
Ruth, Kehillat.
Oh, Ruth. When do we read Ruth? On Shavuot. Kohelet? Sukkot. Why do you read it on Sukkot? Kohelet is a very sobering book. It was written by Shlomo HaMelech. It was written by Shlomo HaMelech after his whole incident with Ashmedai, which is, God willing, we'll get there probably in a few years when we plumb through the Navi. But Shlomo HaMelech was thrown out of his kingdom for a certain amount of time, and then when he came back a lot wiser. He experienced life in the street. He experienced life in not as the king. And he wrote Kohelet. And Sukkot is a time with tons and tons of joy. We have the Simchat Beit HaShoeva, it's the Chag HaAsif, we're bringing in all the crops, everything's fantastic. Hashem says you have to remember that with the joy usually comes sin. People get lightheaded, people quickly pass the line from excitement and happiness to frivolity and just craziness. And that's why we read Kehillat, to keep us grounded. One of the reasons. Next we have Shir HaShirim, also written by Shlomo. Shlomo HaMelech wrote a lot of the Megillot actually. Shir HaShirim is written by Shlomo HaMelech. It's our custom that we read it Friday nights, every Shabbat. Every Shabbat on Friday night. Echa, Halavai we shouldn't be reading again, but we normally read it on Tisha B'Av. Esther is Purim. And then we have the acronym of Sifrei Emet. Iyov, which was written by Moshe Rabbeinu. Mishlei was Shlomo. Tehillim is David. So really David is the main composer. But there Mizmar LaAsaf, right? Asaf, Bnei Asaf wrote it. Bnei Korach added to it. You have also Adam HaRishon, right? So there were numerous contributors to Tehillim. David HaMelech was the one who compiled and wrote most of it, which is why it's called the Sefer Tehillim of David. So that's the Sifrei Emet. And then we have three more Svarim. Daniel.
Who wrote Daniel?
Daniel wrote Daniel. Ezra Nehemiah wrote it. And then you have Devorah Hayamim, which are like the Chronicles. Okay, which are the Chronicles. Now, interesting, the Gemara lists. Okay, we call these, we have 24 books, right? The Chav Dalid Sifrei Tanakh. But if you count them, it's not true. How many do you really have?
Yeah. Daniel, Ezra and Nehemiah goes within Daniel.
So you really you have 25 here. Right. You really have 25. Ezra and Nehemiah, though, together, and they count as one sefer. And I heard something interesting yesterday. The reason being, Nehemiah wasn't really its own book. According to Zohar HaKadosh, which I know nothing about Kabbalah, but David HaMelech and Bathsheba, before they had Shlomo, had a son. They had a son that didn't even make it to the Brit Milah. He died in infancy. And later came back as a Gilgul, as Nehemiah. And because he was really part of the Malchut of David, he wasn't his own Sefer, and that's why it's considered the 24 Sifrei Tanakh. But simply, it's just put together. Ezra and Nehemiah is one. So that's the Chav Dalid Sifrei Tanakh. And it says that we have 24. Today, you look at when somebody gets married, so they're busy with a gown and with a sheitel, or their hair and the makeup, and things didn't change that much. Women always were women. That's the truth. If you look at even in this week's coming parsha, right, when Eliezer goes to find a wife for Yitzchak, he brings jewelry. So it says that when a woman would get married, she would wear 24 different types of jewelry to make her look beautiful. 24 different takshitim, from the earrings to, must have been pretty expensive endowments, right? So it says just like a kala would get so dressed up and so beautiful, so too the Torah is mekushet at us. And when you want to define yourself, you want to define who you are, you want to define your beauty, right? It's the Torah. It's the 24 Sifrei Tanakh that really transform who we are. They transform who we are, what we represent. And Torah is not any other subject. We sometimes study Torah like we study science. You open a science book, interesting, you delve, close it, and then walk out. Right? The problem is Torah has to be transformational. You have to walk down the street. I was just now, we were driving home, and we were talking about how when you see a Jew, right, who really transformed themselves, that's an indication that the Torah penetrated. Right? And if the person didn't transform themselves, it's a sign that they just learned it as another subject and not something for life. It's like they always attribute it to Aristotle, but it's not true. It wasn't him. They say one of the philosophers was once giving a huge speech on ethics and morals and values and how you have to care about each other and you have to give to humanity. And as he walked out, he picked up a rabbit and he yanked off his foot and he started eating it. And his students were disgusted. And they looked at him and said, you just gave us such good morals and values. How could you do something like that? How could it be? And he looked at him and he said, since when does a mathematician have to become a triangle? Since when is a scientist a telescope? He said, so what? I gave you a class on morals. And he was saying something true. Because most subjects go here and they stop here. They're great intellectual stimulus, right? Which is why a lot of times you'll see sometimes people are drawn also Torah that just stimulates here but doesn't cause any real change. Because stimulating mind is great, it's important, it keeps you back from Alzheimer's and dementia and a lot of good...
Oh, the major in the university.
right, philosophy. But when it comes to practicality, there is no such subject. Right, there is no such thing. But Torah has to transform us because that's our mikushetet. You want to know what makes us beautiful? You want to know what somebody says, that's a Jew? It's only Torah. It's only Torah. And that's the 24 Megillot that we have over here. So now we have to figure out though, we're transferring from Torah, right? Into Navi. And in essence, I want to paint the picture for you, right? You've all had friends, family, mothers, sisters, brothers, kids, right? Now the more time you spend with somebody, the closer you become. Or the more you fight, but the closer you become, the more you know about them. And somebody just sent me a clip that was really sad. It was very disturbing, actually. It showed you the difference between a good friend and a best friend. So there were 20 different things. So it said, for example, the good friend is, if you go to a store and they say, do you like this outfit? They say, yeah, it looks really nice. But the best friend will tell you, no, you look so stupid. The next one was, a good friend, if you're going running, and you say, I need to tie my shoelace, they'll say, okay, let's wait and stop. And the best friend is like, no, we're going to run ahead of you. Right? And it kept on going on. And basically the pattern I realized is that the good friend is nice, and the best friend becomes really mean. Right? Because when there's a certain comfortability with somebody, right? You know, when you're still being all polite and nice, so you can't really say what you think and what you want to do, but somehow when you become best friends, you lose that, which can be a danger. But here, the Jewish people spent 40 years with Moshe Rabbeinu. Through the ins and the birth pangs of leaving Yetziat Mitzrayim to, we don't have water, we don't have enough food, we want more rain, we want every single day, day in, day out. And Moshe Rabbeinu was a faithful leader. Right? Moshe Rabbeinu served them till the very last day. And here they're standing in Arvot Moab. Right? They're just about to go into Israel. And we said, Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem says, your job's up. Right? You did your job. You did a fantastic job leading them in the Midbar, in the desert. But now it's time to give over the reins. And giving it over is one of the most challenging things. Not because Moshe Rabbeinu is a control freak. Not because he needed to be the leader until the day he died. But this was his baby. Right? The Jewish nation was his. He saw it from the formation, through all the trials, and finally when it's coming to the place of success, finally they're reaching their ultimate, Hashem says, Ad Kan, you can't go anymore. Your mission is up. You've done what you have to do.
Isn't that just like a parent when the child becomes of age? I think Moses was afraid that they wouldn't do it right. Only he felt he knew how to do it right. And to give the reins over, I don't think it was an ego thing. I think it was the lack of trust that they're not going to do it right.
So you bring up a good point. Most normal people have a very hard time letting their kids go. Right? Not even their kids, just letting go, period. Right? Letting go, period. You know, sometimes you'll tell somebody to do something and then we micromanage them. So you can make sure you told me the first time. Right? We have to learn how to let go. Let go. So, you know, now, thank God, when we have a lot of company, people ask me, what can I help you in the kitchen? Right? And as silly as it may sound, I was talking to my sister the other day, and I said, Chai, you know, I dice my things a certain way. Right? I make my salad a certain way. And then when people offer to help, it's to my benefit. Right? When people offer help, it's to my benefit. And yet it takes an amount of letting go and saying, you know what, it's going to be exactly the way she does it, because it really doesn't matter. But Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't have a hard time giving up. Nowhere in the parsha does it say Moshe has a hard time. What he does have a hard time is he wants to go into Israel. He keeps on begging God. He says, I just want to cross into the land of Israel. I just want to come. Can I just step in? I won't be the leader. In fact, Moshe says, I won't lead. I'll be one of the people. I'll step down from my position. I'll let Yoshua lead. And Hashem says, Moshe Rabbeinu missions up. And the question is, so how do you go about finding a leader? Right? Weird. How do you select? So they say there was once this, with Rebbes today, it's become sort of like monarchies, where the father gives it over to the son gives it over to the next son. And on the one hand, there's an advantage to it. There's an advantage because, in the end of the day, when you grow up in the king's palace, you know the ins and outs, you know how to act like a prince, you know. There's something nice about that. On the other hand, part of becoming the leader is that people have to choose you. People have to choose you. You know, somebody once said that in a certain people that someone was stealing people from their community, and our response is you can't steal people, right? People choose where they want to go. That's a choice people make, right? And when it comes that leadership becomes stale, where it has to be given over to the son, regardless of whether the son wants to be it or not, it leaves a lot of room for disastrous kind of chassidut, which unfortunately we have. That's the truth. Unfortunately, we do have that. So they say there was once a Rebbe who passed away, and he had 3 sons. He should have had 1 son and 7 daughters. It would have been much better. He had 3 sons. And they all said, I'm supposed to be the next Rebbe. I know, but I'm the oldest. Yeah, but I'm the smartest. But I'm the most pious. And for months fighting on, who's going to be the next Rebbe? One morning, one of them comes and he says, Chevra, come sit down. Let's have coffee. Let's talk about this. He said, last night I had a dream. He said, what should I tell you? I'm embarrassed to say, but our father came to me. And he was wearing a long white beard like he always did. His face was shining. He looked terribly sad. And he said, this fighting, it doesn't give me menuchat hanefesh. He said, I want you to know, I decided who should take over. And he's looking at his 2 brothers and said, this is what father told me. He said, I want you to be the mamshich. I want you to take over. So he turns to his brother, he said, I'm so sorry, but clearly you're not going to be the next rabbi because father chose me. And the 2 brothers look at him. And they say, no, it's interesting. Because if our father wanted you to be the leader, he should have come to us. Right? If he wanted you to be the leader, he should have come to us. How do you verify dreams? You don't.
Which is
right?
very one of the tapes that I listened.
Yeah.
That someone came to the Chazar of Lublin and he told him that he had a dream that he's running for 3 days, and after 3 days the Hasidim appointed him a Rebbe. So the Chazar of Lublin said, well, it's a good thing, but the Hasidim should dream this.
Right, the same dream, right? Right, the dreams have to match up on both ends. It's like somebody once came to the psychiatrist, he said, what's the problem? He said, I have 15,000 rooms in my house, and I have maidservants coming and going, and I have a Lexus and BMWs lined up. He said, no, so what's the problem? He said, because in reality I only have a 1-bedroom apartment, I can't pay rent. Right? So when your dreams and your reality don't match, it's a problem. Right? So the question is, so how do we choose a leader? How do we choose a leader here? And Hashem gives us the formula. You want to know how to choose a leader? You have to go back into the Chumash, right? We have to go back into the Chumash. What was it that made Moshe, right? Moshe said, Yoshua, you're the manhig. So we know the answer is Hashem. Hashem told him Yoshua has to be the next manhig. The question is why though? Was he the smartest? Was he the bravest? In fact, Moshe Rabbeinu had sons. So why didn't they take over? Right? Why didn't they take over? So you okay? Yeah, he was good. So Chazal tells us something very interesting. Chazal says, Gdola Shimusha Yoter Milimuda. You want to know the secret for real leadership? You want to learn how to really transform yourself? You have to do what's called Shimush. What is Shimush? It's called an internship. Right? Today, if you want to get a college degree, so you go to school, so today the whole system, okay? You go to school, so you can go to school, so you can continue going to school, so you can then pay back your loans for eternity and hopefully have your kids go to school, right? And start the cycle all over again. But what happens? You go to school, and any field that you go into, they will always send you out to do field work. Right? Why are they sending you to do field work? Because there's experience. Now, as much as you can learn in a sterile classroom, in a sterile lab, it's never going to prepare you for the real world. It's never going to prepare you for the situation where somebody says something different than the textbook. Right? Which is why today it's interesting. I see, especially, again, I'm not in New York, but especially in California, you have a lot of textbook parents, right? Where everything is according to the rules. It says 4 to 8 months, the kid has to do this. I should eat this. The kid has to go to sleep at this point, in this hour, has to be quiet. Problem is, the kids never read the textbook. So they have a mind of their own. They act however they want because they're not part of the textbook, right? The sterile lab doesn't give you a real feel of the world. And therefore, what? Might take him out if he's there. If he cries, so far he's good. So far he's good. What? He's getting there. He's starting to. I know Ariel already knows his faces. Hashem says, in order for you to lead my nation, you couldn't just be sitting in the library studying Torah, right? Closing yourself away from the world, living in a little fortress, because you might be very knowledgeable. You might know tons, but if you know, it's interesting sometimes in Israel where you see like the bands that they put up. If you ever want to know what's going on in the news, just come to Shaar into our neighborhood. They say the walls are held up by the flyers, not the flyers are held up, right? They have like it's amazing. I used to watch it at like 5 o'clock in the morning. You have this guy coming around with this huge like bucket. It's on wheels. Yeah, it's a mini garbage pail, and it's full of glue. And he sticks and he has this big brush, and he has a whole bunch of flyers over here. Pulls one out, window wipes it, pulls out another one, and plasters the wall. And this happens every single day. So they have this announcement, that one. If you look at the wall, it looks like the whole world's problems are caused by the internet and the iPhones. You should know those are mainly the posters that are there, right? But it was interesting when one of the posters had a ban against an iPhone, and one of the names that were written underneath it was one of the prominent rabbis. And it was interesting because me and my husband had passed, and I said, I wonder if this rabbi has ever even seen an iPhone. Now, I'm not blaming the rabbi, but sometimes if you don't even know what an iPhone looks like, so how do you ban it? How could you ban it? And Hashem says, of course it's important to learn. Of course you need the knowledge. But if you don't have the hands-on practice, you can't lead my nation. And therefore he says, let's look at Yehoshua. Let's look at this candidate a minute. So we're going to go back into Shemot. We meet Yehoshua. We're going to go into Shemot Yud Zayin. Now, this is not the first encounter that we have, but it's a significant first. We're in Shemot Yud Zayin. Okay, this is right after the Pasuk Yud Zayin. Yeah, Pasuk Tet, but I want. Yeah, okay, we could do Tet first. Yud Zayin we'll go to afterwards. No, it is not the first time. It's the first significant incident that we see, though. What happens? So you have the Jewish nation just made it out of Egypt. It says that in the 210 years that they were there, not one slave ever made it out alive. You can imagine that this was a place, you know. You think about like communist Russia, right? Double that by I don't even know what fold. Egypt was a place that nobody would want to land up. And once they landed up, nobody left. So here you have not just one person leave. You have an entire nation marching out in broad light, right? Marching out into the desert. The Yam Suf splits. I mean, crazy things are happening here. Oh, and suddenly comes this nation, Amalek. And Amalek says, you know what? You think they're so great? You think they're so mighty? We'll show you. They're just like everybody else. Okay, they're strong. It's true. They maybe have God on their side some of the time, right? What do? They come and they attack. So what happens? If you look into the pasuk, it says, "Vayavo Amalek." Pasuk Chet. Amalek comes vayilachem im Yisrael beRefidim. They come fight the Jews in Refidim, right? So Vayomer Moshe el Yoshua. So Moshe turns to Yoshua and he says, "Bechar lanu anashim." Right? Choose some people for me and you. Vitzei hilachem. Right? Go out and fight. Ba'amalek. Go out meaning go out of the tent. Right? Where were they? They were the Jews we know in the Midbar were surrounded by the Ananim, by the clouds. So he says, pick people and we're going to go out and we're going to fight. So already you see over here the first major encounter where we see Yoshua. He's going out to fight. He's in the trenches. He's not sitting back in the desk and saying, I'll give the orders. As much as we're going out to fight. You and I, and we're going to take our people. In Hebrew, they have a famous expression that the commanders say. What do they always say? Acharai. What does acharai mean?
You first.
After me. Right? I'm first. After me. It takes a certain amount of leadership to say, if I think it's right, people are very willing to talk the talk, but not willing to walk the walk. I'll be there, I'll do it. Right? I firmly believe that. And then when you put them up to test, they fail miserably, right? You have to be willing either not to talk, right? Don't talk. But if you're willing to express your opinion, so then you have to really stand by it, even when it gets really, really tough. And Moshe Rabbeinu says to Yeshua, come, we're going out. We're going to go out and we're going to fight. And if you look at Pasuk Yud, Yeshua says something very interesting. It says, Vayas Yoshua Kasher Amalo Moshe. Yoshua listens. You know, Golda Meir once spoke to President Truman. She got onto the phone. President Truman said, you know, I don't think you understand what it's like to run a country with a good couple of million people. She said, you're right. She said, but I don't think you know what it's like to run a country with a couple of 100,000 prime ministers. When everybody leaves, it's a problem. It's a problem. Part of being able to intern, part of being able to lead, is also knowing how to take a second place. It's knowing how to be a part of the team, right? It's knowing not just to bark orders, but also to be involved in it. You know, I'm sure we've all had those managers who, let's give them a cup. Good sign. So they go out there fighting, right? And he listens to the orders. He listens to Moshe Rabbeinu. But more than he listens, he's observing. He's taking notes. He's really, literal field work he's doing, right? He's observing. How does Moshe interact with the people? How does he respond to them? What does he say to them? They fight. And if you look at Pasuk Yud Dalid, already here we have the hint of who's being prepped to be the next candidate. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe. Hashem says to Moshe, now after the war, the Jews win, right? They come out scratched, but not broken. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, and Hashem says to Moshe, Ktov zot, write this incident, zikaron b'sefer, write it in the sefer, v'sim ba'odnei Yoshua, right? And put it to the ears of Yoshua. Ki machon emche et zecher Amalek mitachat HaShamayim. That we know we have a mitzvah to erase Amalek completely, right? Get rid of Amalek 100%. Machat timche et zecher Amalek, right? We know we read it by Parshat Zachor. We have an obligation. We know later on when Shaul HaMelech, right, was sent by God, he was supposed to kill out the whole entire. We were supposed to get rid of Amalek completely.
We've got the Palestinians.
Huh?
We have the Palestinians now.
You know, but they're not Amalek. You should know. They're not Amalek. They're Yishmael, and we have a different war to fight with them. We have a different problem with Yishmael, because Yishmael, if you look at his name, it says Yishma, right? El, God listens, and we know that his whole existence started with Hashem listening. Hagar was sent away, right? Sarah says, "This is not a good match in my house. This boy is teaching my son to do really, really bad things, and I'm not okay with it." You know, parents today are really afraid to say no. To say no, right? We're so worried that we might cause low self-esteem, or we might cause the kids to run away, and and it's important to know it's true. When you could say yes, because why should you say no? But it's just as important to say no. It's just as important to say no. And Sarah says, no, in my house I won't tolerate this. It's not going to work. And Abraham has to send Hagar and Yishmael, and we know that Yishmael was just about to die, right? He was dying of thirst, he was dying of high fever, and Hagar prays. And the Malachim say, the angels say, we're not saving him. We see in the future what he's going to do to the Jewish nation. And God brings a fascinating concept over there. He says, we judge a person ba'asher hu sham, the way he is then. The way he is then. Right then, was Yishmael bad? Answer is no. He didn't do anything to the Jews at that point. And Hashem says, we're going to save him. Even if in the future, it's true, they're going to harm the Jews, and unfortunately you read the news every single day. It's mind-boggling to see what they're doing. I mean, I read the news, and it's gut-wrenching. But Hashem says, when you judge a person, judge them for who they are today. And I used to have a rule when I taught in Brooklyn. I taught girls who, they were great. They just didn't know what the word behave meant. They were wonderful. I'm serious. I love them. But they were real street kids. Like, they just didn't know what behaving meant. I had one girl, her name was Tuna. Adorable 10th grader. And she had 2 radios on her desk. And she was trying to radio into each other. So I took one of them away. Right, so I took one away. So I hear her going on her desk. Miss Global Girl, 1, 2, 1, 2. She's radioing me because I'm holding. So I said to her, Tuna, soon I'm going to ask you to test it to see if it works in the hallway. Meaning, thank you, I'm going to punish her. So she's like, oh, let me go see if it works in the hallway. She runs out. She's in the principal's office. Miss Global Girl, 1, 2, 1, 2. I said, I can't even punish her because she doesn't even understand the concept of what misbehaving means, right? But
sounds like a very bright.
But what happened? I remember when Chanukah, I would always bring them donuts. And my rule was, I gave out the donuts right when I came into the classroom. Why? I said, because chances are in the next 5 seconds, somebody's going to do something that's not okay. That's just the kind of girls that they were. I said, and then what's going to happen? Then suddenly the donuts are going to become conditional, and then you're going to lose it, and you're not going to, by the time 45 minutes are going to be gone, I'm going to walk home with the donuts. Right? I'm going to end up walking home with all of them. You have to realize, Ba'ashar Rosham, the way a person is, so yesterday they did something wrong, tomorrow they might do something, but today they're okay. Today they're okay, and it's really tough. I know, right? It's tough, you know why? Because we talk about forgiveness, but we don't believe in it. We don't. We forgive somebody until they do the next thing wrong, and suddenly, they say when a husband and wife fight, the man never has to remember anything because there's no reason 2 people have to remember the same incident. It's true. We say we forgive until the person steps on your toes again, and suddenly, yeah, but 20 years ago and 5 months before, and I know when your mother called, but today we're okay. Right? We have to learn today is today, tomorrow's tomorrow. So Ishmael we have a different fight with. Because here it's more of a spiritual fight than just Amalek who just wants to wipe us out. They just want to wipe us out, and it's on a different level. Yishmael we have a problem with. Yishmael has a power of tefillah that we have to counteract. The fact that they pray 5 times a day, it's a kitrug on us. It causes bad things for us because this is a nation who doesn't believe in. Again, back to Gold. I didn't like Golda Meir as a prime minister, but I liked her as her sayings are great. And probably the drinks she had must have made her say something.
She said what?
She used to say that people always would put, since the founding of Israel, push for peace. And God willing, we're going to get there. We're going to get there as soon as we start Yoshua, the discussion of who said Israel's ours, right? Why should we go? Don't worry, it's ours, Ariel. It's ours. But we're going to get into that interesting discussion. But Golda Meir once said when they were pushing for peace, she said, we'll be able to make peace with the Arabs when they love their children more than they hate us.
Wow.
Right? When they love their children more than they hate. We're dealing with a nation that's crazy and zealous with crazy things. But in the end of the day, I was just teaching my girls today in Navi, back to Navi, where the king of Moab comes to war against the Jews. And the Jews, at that point, we have Yehoram, one of the kings. Yeah. Yehoram, one of the kings of Malchei Yisrael, right? We know that the kingdom split, so we have Malchei Yisrael, Yehoram. And from Malchei Yehuda, Yehoshaphat. They go to war together, and they join with Edom, and they come fight against Moab. At this point, the prophet is Elisha, and Elisha joins, and he prophesies, he said, don't worry, God's going to help you through this one. Hashem did nisim, He brought water for them. They were in the desert, they had no water, they were dying of thirst. Hashem brings water. Moab comes, Moab sees the water and thinks it's blood because the sun was shining at that angle. So they say, they must have had internal fighting, and they go into the camp, they go straight into the lion's den, and they really, really smash Moab. But when Moab sees what's happening, they say, 1 second, it must be God. And at that point, Moab takes his firstborn son, and he sacrifices him. Now, not to God, he sacrifices him to his avodah zarah. And as soon as he does that, again, it brings kitrug on us. Because over there, God says, look, my people, what are they serving? They're serving idols at that point. Yeah? They're not listening to Hashem. And here comes Melech Moab with a cause that's so unholy, and yet he does it with so much zeal. Right? So much zeal. And we have to realize that we're not championing out to kill chas v'shalom and to do things, but we have to take that power and channel it properly. We have so much goodness that we have to spread to the world. We should do it as well as they do. Somebody once said about the Christians that I think we're cooked if I'm not mistaken, that they show the sheker, right? They show the untruth, but they pursue it with so much emet. Like, they're so fully involved. You'll find missionaries at every doorstep all the time, pamphlets everywhere. Is that we have the emet, but we pursue it with so much sheker. right? So today I will come, tomorrow I will wear the kippah, I won't wear it today, I'll keep my Jewish value, tomorrow I won't. You have to be Jewish with Jewish values. So what happens? Back to Yoshua. So Yoshua is already over here. Hashem says, tell it to Yoshua. Because in the end of the day, if you look at the Rashi over here, Rashi says, why should I tell it Boznei Yoshua? He says, Hamachnit v'sim Boznei Yoshua, Hamachnis et Eretz et Yisrael la'aretz. Right? He's going to be the one who's going to bring them into Israel, and because he's going to be the one to bring them in, sheyitzaveh et Yisrael l'shalem lo et gmulo, and he has to be the one to tell him that we didn't finish our job with Amalek. Right? So already Yoshua is being prepped to be the next leader. But let's look at another source that we find. If you look into the Bamidbar, right? So we're moving slowly through the desert. Right? We're moving through the desert. Now I found a fascinating chart. If I find it here, I'll show it to you. Let me see here, which I'll pass around, but it's fascinating just to see the time frame of when the Chumash was written. Whereas Bereshit, right, the whole Sefer Bereshit lapses 2,309 years. Shemot is only 139 years that we have, and then you jump to Vayikra, which is written in 1 month, right? 1 month. Yeah, Bamidbar, how long were they there? 40 years, so it's the 39 years, because the first year you start over here in Shemot. Okay? And then Devarim is 1 month, also written 1 month, which is all the Tochacha. This is like the final words that Moshe Rabbeinu is giving over. And then Yehoshua, the Sefer Yehoshua, which we're going to be studying, is written over the span of 28 years. Okay? Which is an interesting thing to look at. So we're going now to Bamidbar. Right? Let's look at Bamidbar a minute. We have Bamidbar Yud Aleph, Pasuk Chav Tet. I wish we could learn a whole day every day. The Chumash, I can't say it enough. I tell it to my girls and they think I'm crazy. I always tell them we're the luckiest people in the world because Hashem created such a beautiful world, and some people just bumble around in darkness forever. And we got the Torah, which is the Torah Emet, which is, it said the Torah is Lashon Ora, light. Right? It lights up our eyes. If we would only learn it. You have to learn it. So if you look at Bamidbar in Bahalotcha, we have over here an incident. Okay, so here we have something very interesting. Let's backtrack a minute. That's something very interesting happening over here. Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, right? I'm going to start from Chav Dalet so we can backtrack. Vayetze Moshe, Moshe Rabbeinu goes out to the nation. Vayidaber el ha'am et divrei Hashem, and he tells them the word of Hashem. Right? Hashem spoke to Moshe, and Moshe spoke to the nation. Vayesof shivim ish miziknei ha'am. He gets the 70s Zkenim. Right? Now Zkenim doesn't necessarily mean old as much as what is Zaken? Why? What's the acronym? Good. Zeh shekana chachma. That's a Zaken. Right? An old person generally comes with wisdom, hopefully. Right? Rabbi Reisman once said somebody came over. Rabbi Reisman is the rabbi of the Agudas Yisrael of Madison in Brooklyn, and he's actually the inspiration behind these shiurim. I used to go to his Navi shiurim every single Motzei Shabbat, and the life that he brings to Navi is just amazing. But he said somebody once came over to him and he said he's so worried. He said because it says in Pirkei Avot, it says Ben Shivim Lizikna. When somebody turns 70, old age sets in. And he said, I'm just around the corner of 70. So Rabbi Reisman looked at him and he said, you'll have nothing to worry about. He said, it said Ben Arba'im Libina, 40 to wisdom. He said, and nothing happened, so you don't have to worry so much. Right? So the truth is, hopefully with age comes wisdom. Right? But not necessarily does wisdom not rest in young people. You know, sometimes you meet somebody, they just have an old soul. And they could be so young, and they're just so wise. They're just so wise. They know things. You can hear, you can listen. And I sometimes meet old people, and you know, I saw this YouTube. I don't even know when. They asked an old lady what message she wanted to say to the world. The only word she had was curse words, and I couldn't believe it. I said, "You're 85. I would think you have a better message to spread to the world." Right? So he says, "Bring Zkenim, bring 70 wise men, yeah, vayamod otam svivot ha'ohel." And we're going to gather around the Ohel Moed, right? The Mishkan. Now what happens? Vayered Hashem ba'anan. Hashem comes down in a cloud. Vayidaber elav, and speaks to them. Vayatzer min haruach asher alav. And here Moshe Rabbeinu is getting nevuah. And the nevuah, you have to think of it kind of like, you take my phone has a light, right? So you take this, you have the center, well, at night it works. You have like one strong strobe, but then it radiates everywhere else, right? So picture that with the nevuah. Hashem's giving Moshe Rabbeinu nevuah, but the sound waves are spreading to all those 70 Neviim, and they start saying nevuah themselves. They start giving nevuah. Now this is a parasha in itself to learn what's going on here, right? But then we have something. Okay, so vayitnabu v'lo yasufu. They just, the Ruach Hashem was there, and they were able to perceive things, right, in a much more heightened fashion, and that's why they were saying nevuah. Now what happens? Vayisharu. If you look at pasuk Chava, vayisharu shnei anashim b'machane. Two people from these 70 stay. Shem ha'echad Eldad. Right? One of them was named Eldad. V'shem ha'sheni Meidad. So we have Eldad and Meidad who stay. Vatanach alehem haruach, and they're still giving nevuah, right? They're still giving nevuah. And somebody runs. It says vayaratz hanal, right? And tells Moshe Rabbeinu, they're still saying nevuah. They're still saying nevuah. Everybody already left, and they're still there. So vayam Yoshua ben Nun, right? Our leader. Should I ask my husband to take him?
What's up?
Huh? Oh. Let me ask my husband to come take him. Yeah? Hi Marlene, how are you?
Fine, I'm here.
Let me just ask my husband if he can come get him.
Okay, I can take him.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah?
Where is he?
He's here. I'll let you. Yeah?
Some competition.
Thank you, Dolly, for holding it.
So darling.
You need a cup?
Yes, Ariella.
Yeah. Page 1, page 2.
I don't think it's good to suck on that.
So what happens? These two Nevi'im, Eldad and Meidad, are still saying nevuah. Now, listen to what happens. So a Nar comes, right? Who is this Nar? Rashi says it was Gershom, the son of Moshe, comes, and he says, they're still saying nevuah. So Yoshua responds, right? V'yan Yoshua ben Nun, and Yoshua ben Nun misharet Moshe. The biggest and most beautiful title he could get is that he was the misharet. He was the servant of Moshe, right? Mibchorav, right? Vayomar Adoni Moshe kilaim. He says, Moshe Rabbeinu, get rid of them, right? Get rid of them. Now listen to what they were saying though. Eldad and Meidad were saying nevuah, and what were they saying? They were saying, Shayu Omrim, right? The Baal HaTurim says, what were they saying? Moshe met, Yoshua machnis Yisrael la'aretz. Right? The Gemara says, they were giving nevuah that Moshe Rabbeinu is going to die, and Yoshua ben Nun is going to take us into Israel. And Yoshua says, Moshe Rabbeinu, you have to stop them from what they're saying. You have to stop them. Which shows you, firstly, the humility of Yoshua. The humility, where here is his rabbi. His rabbi's still alive. He's still in the position where he's leading. And he says, you have to stop them. They're saying things that are heretical. And Moshe responds to him something very interesting. Rachel, you have the place over there?
Yeah.
Yes, you want to read Moshe Chavtet?
המקנא אתה לי ומי ייתן כל עם אדוני נביאים כי ייתן אדוני את רוחו עליהם.
Oh, beautiful.
You
He
want to
says,
translate it
yeah.
into English?
Vayomer lo. So Moshe Rabbeinu responds to him. He says, let me teach you something. He says, "Hamekane atali." Why are you sticking up for me? He said, why are you sticking up for me? What they're saying is not true. They're saying something that's true. They're saying something true. You don't have to be so zealous. If you want to be a leader of the people, you can't be hot-headed. You can't be hot-headed. It's true that they're saying something, and what they're saying is right. And Yoshua on his end, true, had to stand up for his rabbi. That's the truth. Yoshua had to. It was mitpnei kvodo, for his respect. But here Moshe Rabbeinu is giving him a beautiful lesson, and Yoshua is mikabel. He says, if you want to be a leader of people, you cannot be hot-headed. Now sometimes you see rabbis, they get up there and they rant and they read and they scream. It says, Torah is diracheh darchei noam. God's ways are pleasant. And if you want to know what's not Torah, just look for the unpleasantness. And if it's not pleasant, it cannot be Hashem's word. It cannot be, because Hashem made Torah so beautiful. It's supposed to be something that when you see it, wow, this is what I want to be attached to. And if it's not, then you know it's not Torah, right? Then it's not Derecheha. And Moshe Rabbeinu is giving us a very valuable lesson. He says, you're going to lead the nation. You should know they're going to be nags. They're going to complain because they're Jews. It's never going to be enough. I once went on a trip to Poland, and I was blown away. It was interesting. How did I get to this group? I was flying back for my niece's wedding. Now, my friend calls me up, and she said, it's Chaf Alif Adar. Now, Chaf Alif Adar is Rabbi Elimelech of Lejen's yahrzeit. Now, Rabbi Elimelech of Lejen's wasn't just called Rabbi Elimelech, he was called the Rebbe Rabbi Elimelech, meaning the rabbi of the rabbis. Rabbi Elimelech and his brother Reb Zusha would go from town to town, just inspiring people, loving the Jewish people. And they say when Rabbi Elimelech came back to his town, he was screaming, and they said, Meirul got hurt. And he jumped. He said, my son Meirul? And they said, no, Meirul, the other ones. And then he looked at him and said, Elimelech, you went away for a year, and we would think that your midot became better, and look at you. First, when you thought it was your child, so you were panic struck. But when you heard it was the neighbors, he said, you turn right back around, and clearly you didn't finish your mission. Clearly you don't love the Jews enough. And Rabbi Elimelech would always say that if you come to his grave, he said, I guarantee that you won't die without doing tshuva. And it's amazing, if you come to his grave, it looks like Yom Kippur and Simchat Torah mixed together, where there's such intensity and such fervor, and everybody's just swaying with their eyes closed, praying, and yet there's so much joy. There's so much joy right outside. There's singing, there's dancing, there's food. So my friend called me up and she said, it's Chaf Alef Adar. Come on, you can't fly and not stop. I said, you're right. Okay, so I changed my ticket. And I'm going to fly into Poland. This was on a Thursday. Yeah, Thursday afternoon. Problem is I can't get back from Poland to New York on time for Shabbat. Fine, I'm going to stay in Warsaw for Shabbat. Sunday morning I'll take a flight from Krakow to Warsaw, from Warsaw to Holland, from Holland to New York. She's going to meet me there. My friend never made it. She's from New Jersey. She came to the airport, and she told me she was just too intimidated by all the New Yorkers. She said everyone was dressed so fancy. Everyone was just there with their own group. She said, I couldn't do it. I cried my eyes out. She wasn't little. She said her father came and picked her up. Now great, I was stuck in Poland, so I'm on my own. I can't tell, it was the most inspirational trip. I never wanted to go to Poland. I never wanted to go, because I find that people go there and they become very depressed, and they don't use it as a springboard. We're not supposed to perpetuate the Holocaust. We're supposed to live because of it. We're supposed to live and make up for the people that aren't here. We're not supposed to drown in the sorrow. Most people don't know that balance. So I never wanted to go. I went on such a phenomenal tour. It was so inspiring. I mean, the tour guide was a fantastic Rabbi Aubrey Hirsch. Rabbi Dr. Aubrey Hirsch from England. Fantastically well-versed, very, very intelligent rabbi. So back to, how did I get there? Rabbi Elimelech, I'm telling you about Lejensk. Poland.
That he didn't, clearly he didn't love the Jewish people enough.
Yeah. Well, there was a reason I was telling you this whole story about.
It'll come.
About people nagging. But I don't remember. Oh, okay. No. Rabbi Elimelech.
2 Jews and 3 opinions is about the same thing.
Yeah. Okay, I don't remember the connection, but there was one here. So what happens? Moshe Rabbeinu says to Yoshua, he says, you're going to become the leader of a Jewish nation? Yeah. Oh, I know what I was telling you. Okay. So this trip that I joined, I ended up... Now I know what I was telling you. I came from Israel with one group. We flew, it took maybe 4 hours, 4 or 5 hours to get there, but then we sat on the bus for hours. Now, if you've ever been to Poland, it's amazing. Firstly, I don't think they have any vowels. So every single word is about this long, with A, B, C, D, K, J, L, 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 L. You can't even read the words if you tried. Secondly, the signs are about this high. So you can never see the sign until you passed it. Oh, we were supposed to turn off there. And the place is pitch black. The roads are dark. My husband went to Poland also that year. A few weeks later, he said they were in a hotel. They could not get into the room. Trying the handle, pushing the card in. They called finally the superintendent. He said, oh, like this. And he takes the handle, he cranks it all the way up this way. handles go like this. You don't put them this way, but I guess in Poland you do, right? So what happened? The tour was an amazing tour. But what I found fascinating, I joined a group that had come from America where they were about 60 plus older people who were very wealthy, and they were doing a pilot group. They were doing a pilot group for an organization, and I don't know why, Hashem made that they let me join. And it was fascinating. Everything was 5-star. From the food, to they had the Mishpacha magazine, to the Yated, to they had like Reisman's cookies on the bus. And somehow people found complaints. Somehow the food was too hot, it was too cold, it was too crowded, the air conditioning was... And to me it was mind-boggling. You're in Poland. 70 years ago, you would be so happy to be on a bus with these luxuries. Yeah, and suddenly it's the air conditioning doesn't feel so good. Jews are hard. Trust me, Jews are hard. Take an average non-Jew. You sell them something, you never see them again. The Jew, you sell it to them, for generations you're going to hear about them. It doesn't work. I'm not sure it's the right color. It didn't match. You sold me a faulty product. You used it 6 years. Of course it's faulty by now. No, I want my rebate. I want a full refund. You pay me. I did that. Jews we're a tough bunch. That's the truth. It says, Am Kshe Oref, right? We're tough. We're really tough. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, if you want to be the leader for the Jewish nation, you have to know you cannot be a Kana'i. It's true that sometimes you see something and it makes your blood boil. And sometimes you see something and you're right about it. It's not that you're wrong, you're right about it. You're seeing an injustice. And it's making you angry. You're seeing something that's really wrong. But you have to know that, there are two types of people. Some who want to vent, and some who actually want to make change. And I'll tell you the difference. The person who wants to vent, when they see injustice, they start yelling and screaming and reacting and getting angry. And in essence, you know what it does to the person? It makes them completely tune out. Their mind closes, right? Their mind completely closes. And in essence, there's nobody there. There's nobody home. But if you want to really reach out to somebody, if you really want to get to them, so you have to understand what made them do it, right? What made them react like this? How can I get the message across? How can I inspire them to change? Moshe says, if you want to lead the Jewish nation, Yoshua, you have to know you cannot be a Kana'i. You cannot be a Kana'i. And to be fair, Yoshua accepts. Because Yoshua isn't just learning from Moshe. He's a Talmid of Moshe. He is a part of Moshe. He's a continuation of Moshe. He's a mishamesh, right? What's a mishamesh? It means somebody who doesn't just learn.
Personal assistant.
So now we have it's called a shamas, right? We call it a shamash. Really, it's a mishubash of the word mishamesh, right? Which means shimush. Again, somebody who's catering, somebody who's serving, somebody who's there, sitting there to really learn. And maybe I think we still have a little bit of time. Am I right? Yeah? A little bit. I'm going to take another 5 minutes. We will look just a little bit further in Bamidbar Yud Gimel. Pasuk. So here we have the famous parasha of Shlach, right? Here they're going to be sending spies into Israel, right? Go check out Canaan. So what happens? We have over here a beautiful Or HaChaim HaKadosh. Let me just find the pasuk here. Moshe Rabbeinu changes Yoshua's original name was Hoshea ben Nun, and he decides to add a yud. Yeah, he adds a yud to his name
before he sent him.
Correct. He adds a yud before he sent him, and he says, "Ko Yoshiacha me'atzat meraglim." Now let me just find that pasuk.
What are you looking for?
Ko Yoshiacha me'atzat meraglim. It's in Yud Gimel.
Is it
Here. It's in Pasuk Tet Zayin. Yeah? It says, these are the names, Ele Shemot HaNashim Asher Shalach Moshe Lator Et Haaretz. These are the names of the leaders that Moshe Rabbeinu sent. Right? You have to understand, the Meraglim were tzaddikim. Every single one of them. When they went, it says Anashim Tzaddikim. Unfortunately, when they came back, it wasn't the same story. It wasn't the same story. So we have 12 of them going, right? And if you look at Vayikra Moshe LeHoshea Ben Nun, Moshe Rabbeinu calls Hoshea Ben Nun, he changes his name to Yehoshua.
It doesn't say.
Where? It says in Pasuk Tazayin, Vayikra Moshe LeHoshea Ben Nun,
Right.
Yehoshua. No, so if you look at Rashi,
Yeah, you're right.
right? Rashi tells you why does he change his name? Hitpalel, he prayed for him. He said, Ka, meaning Hashem, Yoshiacha me'atzat meraglim. Hashem should save you from the plan of the meraglim. Don't fall into the trap. And the Or HaChaim HaKadosh says something beautiful. Yeah. I believe it was the Or HaChaim HaKadosh. No. I used a different chumash in school, and I see the formats. Here. Okay. Vayikra Moshe Rabotein. Right. So, I'm reading from the Or HaChaim HaKadosh. Was Reb Chaim ben Attar. He was one of the Gedolim in Morocco who eventually made it to Israel. I say that the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, when he would go up to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai's kever, at the foot of the mountain, he would get off his horse and off his donkey, and he would crawl up. And as he would crawl, he would cry and scream and say, "How could I come to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai? How could somebody like me come?" And I'll tell you how somebody like him could come. The Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh and the Or HaChaim were in contact. They actually never met, but their students crossed paths. In fact, the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh sent a couple of his students to Israel and told them to go to the Or HaChaim HaKadosh. And the Baal Shem Tov numerous times tried to get to Israel, never made it there. After the third time, he said clearly Hashem doesn't want him to go, and he went back to Mezhebizh. But he was sitting one Sudah Shlishit, and they washed Mayim Achronim, and after Shabbat finished, he said the light in the east just went out. And later on, they found out that the Or HaChaim HaKadosh had passed away right then. And when they asked the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, they said, "How did you know?" He said, "It's not Ruach HaKodesh." He said, "I'll tell you very simply." He said, "There's a secret to why we wash Mayim Achronim that only one person in the generation knows." He said, "And I never knew it, because the Or HaChaim HaKadosh was the one who knew it." He said, "But this Sudah Shlishit, when I went to wash my hands, it finally came to me." He said, "I knew that it must be that the light in the east had gone out." And he was so mitabel. He mourned over the fact that the Or HaChaim HaKadosh had passed away. So the Or HaChaim HaKadosh says, Rabotenu Zichronam Levacha say, Amru sheitpalel alav, meaning he prayed for Yoshua. V'tzarich ladad lama shina shamo. Why did he change his name? Right? Why did he change his name? Why did he add a yud? V'yachol haya litpalel b'leo shino Hashem. He could have prayed for Hoshea Ben Nun. Why did he have to add the yud? Right? He doesn't have to change his name. So he says, V'ulai shenatan koach b'shmo. Because maybe he added strength to his name. Look at the yud. How much does yud equal? 10. Right? It's from the name of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And he says, Ulai shenatan koach b'shmo b'tosfot hayud. By adding the yud, shemispara asara, which numerically equals 10. Kidei sheyuchal neged ha'eser meraglim, so that he would have strength against the other 10 meraglim. Why not 11? Good, because Kaleb ben Yifune was on his side, right? Those were the two that were okay. Ka'amram zal, just like Chazal tells, Zacha, the one who wins, notel chelko, he gets his portion, v'chelek chavero, and also the portion of his friends. So here Moshe Rabbeinu is already sending Yoshua on a mission. He says, but I want to make sure that you don't get tainted, because you're going to be the next leader of the generation, and I'm going to add a yud to your name. You know, Yud is part of Hashem's name. Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey is Hashem's name. He said, I'm going to add it to your name because you need a lot of siyata d'shmaya. Not just on this mission with the Meraglim, but we'll see Bezrat Hashem next time, starting with the Sefer, on the mission with the Jewish nation. Because in order to lead, you need a lot of siyata d'shmaya. Not just brains, not just intelligence, but more than that. I want to end off with this. There was once somebody, his name was Reb Tzvi Hirsch of Rimanov. He was called Hirsch Misharet. How did he become rabbi? So he didn't come from any lineage of any rabbis. Nothing. He was born to a very poor family. His parents died when he was young. What happened was once Reb Moshe Shavors came to his city, and he only wanted to see him. And of course nobody let him come. Who was he? He was the tailor's apprentice. They said, no, you don't come close. You always have those gabayim who make sure that nobody comes close. And he said, but he has to see just once this rabbi. He wishes he could learn. See, no way. He decided he's going to go to the mikveh, and he's going to hide under one of the benches. Because nobody's coming in with the Rebbe to the mikveh. And he waited, and at the crack of dawn, the Rebbe went into the mikveh. And as soon as he went out, Rabbi said he didn't see the rabbi, but he decided he's going to go into the water and tovel right into that water. And he jumped into the water, and when he came out, he was a changed person, and people thought he was crazy. People thought the tailor's boy must have snapped, right? He must have snapped. Suddenly he's acting, and he told the tailor he can no longer stay in the city. He has to go meet the Rebbe of Rimanov. Right? He said, you're going to go meet the Rabbi of Rimanov? That doesn't even make sense. How are you going to get into? Nobody sees him. Doesn't matter. He's going. So he said, okay, if you want to go. He left them. For months he traveled in the freezing cold and boiling hot. He finally makes it to Rimanov. They say nobody sees this rabbi. He's old. He's not well. But he met the shamash of the rabbi, and he was cutting wood. He said, can I help you? He said, sure, why not? If you want to help, of course, grab an axe. And weeks went by, months went by, and he became very close to the shamash of the rabbi. And one day, the shamash could no longer come to work. And normally what the shamash did, the Rebbe of Rimanov would never sleep in a bed. He said, how could I sleep in a bed when God's in Galut? Right? How could I be comfortable when Hashem doesn't have his palace? And he never slept in a bed. He would sleep on straw that was made out of sticks and stones, and they would just put a sheet over it. And every single night the shamash would make the bed, and then they would collect the straw and throw it out. And one night the shamash said he can't make it. And he looked at Rav Hirsch, and he said, maybe you could do it. Maybe you could do it one night. You've been apprenticing a whole year already. And he jumped at this opportunity. He said, of course. So as he's making the bed, he starts saying Tehillim, and he was singing, and he was dancing, and he makes the bed. And the next morning, the Rebbe comes, and he asks the shamash, he said, who made my bed last night? And here the shamash is already thinking, must be something went wrong. Either he didn't put enough sticks, there were too many stones on the bottom, he probably forgot the sheet. And he starts stuttering, he says, Rebbe, I'm so sorry, I know, I just once, I couldn't do it. He says, no, show me who did do it. He says, you know, the Hirsch Mishamish. He says, come up here. I want you to be my new Mishamish. He said, you don't know how sweet the dreams were between the Tehillim and the singing and the connection. He said, I want you to be my Mishamish. And eventually, he was the one who took over the Chassidut, not his son. Eventually, he was the one who became the next Rebbe, which is fascinating. But what does it mean for us practically? Right? What does it mean practically? So I'll tell you what it means. You know, we go to classes because we're Jewish, right? So we want to learn. We pick up a book. We go online. But in the end of the day, learning isn't enough. Learning isn't enough. We have to become apprentices to Judaism. It has to become something that's so a part of our lives that us and the Torah are inseparable. That when you walk in the street and you go to the gym and you're home, everything has to be one. It cannot be that we live three different lives, right? One in the street, one at home, one at the gym, one when I'm with my colleagues. We have to do shimush. Because in order for us to become great leaders, we need our own content. We need our own content. We can't give over what we don't have. And as much as classes will do it for us, it's only through actively being involved in a Jewish community, in a Jewish lifestyle, that we really become shimushim and not just scholars. Because philosophers we have enough. The Maskilim did a great job. They were great philosophers. But to be active participants, right? We don't want to be the observers. It's not fun to watch the game. It's much more fun to play. And in order to play, obviously, you have to know the rules, which is why you have to learn. Right? It's both. You need both. But in the end of the day, Bezrat Hashem, we shouldn't just be passive observers. We want to get all of us onto the ball game, be playing, and involve as many as we could, Bezrat Hashem, to play in the ultimate finals. Bezrat Hashem, next time, I believe we're going to get into actually using the Navi itself of Yehoshua. Now that we've gotten the Chumash part, we're going to just finish the last segment next time in Devarim and segue right into Yoshua. Bezrat Hashem, same place, same time, next week.
Thank you very much.
You're very, very welcome.
Excellent.